I'm Claire Hastings. I'm 35. I work 60-hour weeks as an ER doctor in Austin, and I thought I'd seen every kind of messed up situation until my own family blindsided me with one I never saw coming. It happened on a Sunday lunch. Just a regular roast chicken, iced tea kind of afternoon at my parents' place in Georgetown. I hadn't been home in 6 months. Between double shifts and picking up holidays to cover for younger residents, my visits had gotten few and far between. But I made the effort this time because it was the first family meal since my younger sister, Brooke, got married. We were halfway through dessert, store-bought cheesecake with strawberries, when my mom looked up, all bright and breezy, and said, "Oh, Claire, we moved Brooke and Kyle into your old room. Hope that's okay, sweetheart." Just like that. Like she was offering me more whipped cream. I blinked, fork frozen in midair. "You what?" "Oh, honey, don't be so dramatic." She laughed, waving her hand like this was nothing. "You haven't lived here in years. Brooke and Kyle needed space, and your room was just sitting there." Not a single person at that table, not my mom, not my dad, not even Brooke looked at me like they'd done anything wrong. Kyle didn't say a word. Just kept cutting into his slice of cheesecake like it was the most natural thing in the world to move into a room that wasn't his, in a house that wasn't his, that I paid to repair with my own damn money 5 years ago. I should probably explain. After Dad's back surgery and the plumbing collapse, the house was falling apart. Insurance barely covered the basics. They were drowning in bills. So I took out a personal loan, paid for a new roof, rewired the electrical, and redid the floors in 2 rooms, one of them being my old bedroom. I never asked for anything back. I just didn't want them to lose the house. But apparently that room, my room, was now a starter suite for my sister and her husband, without a single conversation, without a heads up, without even a, "Hey, would this be okay with you?" I didn't say much. I finished my water, excused myself politely, and walked down the hallway to the room I hadn't stepped inside in almost 3 years. The door was open. The blue paint I'd picked out in high school had been painted over in a dull beige. My bookshelf was gone. My framed med school photos? Gone. In their place were Kyle's dumb motivational posters. Rise and grind. Be the alpha. Stuff like that. There was a gaming chair in the corner, a pile of Brooke's makeup on the desk, and, God help me, a mini fridge by the bed. Then I saw it. On the nightstand was a chipped ceramic mug, pale yellow, faded red tulips on the side. My name, Claire, scrawled in Sharpie on the bottom. It was the cup I made in 3rd grade during that art summer camp I hated. The one my mom said she'd always keep because it was too ugly to throw out and too precious to lose. I guess now it was good enough to hold Kyle's electric toothbrush. That's when something cracked inside me. It wasn't about the room, or the mug, or the paint. It was about the fact that they never asked. Because they didn't think they had to. Because I've always been the daughter who says yes, who fixes things, who makes life easier for everyone else. I walked back into the kitchen. Everyone was laughing about something Kyle said. Some joke about people who rent apartments instead of buying. I stood there in the doorway, invisible and boiling, and for the first time in years, I didn't swallow the feeling. I said, "Did you go through my things?" Mom blinked. "Well, we had to make room. Don't be so possessive, Claire." "I'm not possessive," I said slowly, "but I am the legal owner of this house." The silence that followed? Instant and cold. And then Kyle, sweet, jobless Kyle, looked up and said, "Wait, what do you mean you own it?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Because what they didn't know was that I'd quietly put the deed in my name years ago, when I bailed them out. And now? That little fact was about to change everything. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at my mom. She shifted in her chair, suddenly not so relaxed. My dad cleared his throat like he always did when something uncomfortable came up. Brooke just blinked, confused. And Kyle looked nervous for the first time since he waltzed into our family like he belonged here. "You didn't tell them?" I asked Mom quietly. "Claire," she said, forcing a smile. You know that whole situation was complicated. We didn't want to stress anyone. Right, I said, flat. Because it was so much better for me to find out like this. 5 years ago, they were on the edge of foreclosure. Dad's law firm was bleeding clients. The AC had gone out in the middle of July. Pipes were bursting. The house was falling apart, and they were too proud to ask for help. Until Brooke called me in tears and told me Mom had been crying in the pantry because she didn't know how they'd pay the mortgage that month. So I stepped in. I sat down with a real estate lawyer, moved the deed into my name to protect the house from creditors, and took out a personal loan to fund the repairs. No press, no drama. Just me, doing what I always did. Fixing things without being asked. And now here we were. My name was still on the title. I paid the taxes, I paid off the loan last year. But somehow I was now the outsider in a house I saved. I'm sorry, Brooke said slowly, eyes darting to Kyle. I didn't know. No, I cut her off. Of course you didn't, because nobody tells me anything unless something's on fire. Kyle scoffed and muttered, This feels a little dramatic. I turned to him. You forged my signature. That wiped the smirk off his face. What? Mom said, alarmed. Oh, you didn't know? I asked, pulling my phone from my bag. I'd taken photos that morning after finding a form tucked in the drawer of my old desk, an informal permission slip with my name printed neatly, and a scrawled fake signature at the bottom. The date was from last month. The purpose? Temporary occupancy permission for Kyle to use the property for remote work and startup planning. Filed with the county office. I showed it to them. That's not your signature, Dad said, frowning. No kidding. Kyle looked pale. Look, it was just to get a business address. A business address? I snapped. On property you don't own, that you had no right to touch? Claire, Mom said, her voice trembling. We didn't know about this. I swear. And maybe she didn't. Maybe she really believed her son-in-law was just trying to get on his feet. But at that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was how fast they were willing to let go of me, of my rights, my space, my things, just to make room for Brooke's new life. You've always had so much, Claire, Mom whispered. We thought you wouldn't mind. That line, that one damn line, always had so much. I worked full-time through med school. I ate instant noodles for 2 years to pay off my loans. I missed birthdays, weddings, holidays, because I was in scrubs, holding someone's hand as they coded on the table. And Brooke? She dropped out of college after 1 semester. She's never held a job longer than 9 months. She tries things, explores options, and everyone claps for her courage. When she got married last fall, my parents drained their savings to pay for a backyard wedding with string lights and a champagne bar. I gave her $5,000. She never said thank you. But sure, I had so much. So of course they assumed I'd hand over everything I worked for. Again. I felt something inside me snap. Not loudly, just a quiet shift, like a door locking from the inside. I want my room back, I said. Nobody moved. And Kyle, I added, eyes locked on his. You have 30 days to find a new business address. Or I go to the county with this document and report it for what it is. Fraud. Kyle opened his mouth, then closed it. My dad leaned forward, his voice low and strained. Claire, don't overreact. We're family. No, I said, standing up. You're family. I've just been your safety net. I grabbed my bag, heart pounding. And just as I reached the door, Brooke called after me. Claire, wait, there's something you don't know. I turned slowly. She looked terrified. It's not just the room, she said, voice shaking. Kyle's been making plans, legal ones, about the house, and Mom knew. I froze. The room felt too quiet, like everyone had stopped breathing at the same time. I stared at Brooke, trying to understand what she just said. What do you mean, legal plans? I asked slowly. Brooke looked at our mom, then back at me, Kyle's been talking to someone, a real estate guy. He said there were ways to shift ownership, especially if you don't actively live there. I thought he was bluffing, but he's been filling out paperwork. I saw a folder in his bag last week. And you didn't think to tell me? I asked, voice cracking a little. I didn't know how, she whispered. Mom jumped in, tone sharp like she was trying to regain control. Claire, this is being blown out of proportion. Kyle's just trying to get your father's advice on starting a business. This has nothing to do with Dad, I snapped. This is about my house, my name, my life. It wasn't just betrayal at this point. It was calculated. They'd gone from casually giving away my room to trying to erase my name from something I legally owned. I left without another word, got in my car, hands shaking, and drove straight to my apartment. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on my couch and stared at the wall, numb, somewhere between heartbreak and pure rage. The next morning, I dug out the documents, copies of the house deed, the property tax statements, my loan payoff records, everything with my name on it. The paper trail was clear. I was the owner. But if Kyle really was trying something legal, I needed backup. So I made a call. Alex Grant and I went to med school together before he left to become a real estate attorney. We hadn't talked in years, but when I explained what was happening, he didn't hesitate. Claire, he said, if what you're describing is accurate, it's not just shady. It's attempted title fraud. That word, fraud, hit different when a lawyer said it. Send me anything you have, he told me. Let me look into Kyle and see what he's been up to. Over the next 24 hours, Alex worked fast. By Tuesday, he called me with a tone I didn't like. Claire, I found something. Tell me. There's a new LLC registered under Kyle's name, filed 3 weeks ago. He listed your family home as the business address and, get this, the primary asset. I blinked. What does that even mean? It means, Alex said carefully, he's trying to use the house's value as collateral for a business loan. That's when the blood drained from my face. He was going to leverage my home, the house I saved, for some half-baked tech startup he couldn't even fund on his own. I also found the lawyer he's been talking to, Alex added. You're not going to like this. Who? There was a pause. Martin Fielding. I swore under my breath. Martin Fielding was my father's old college friend, a real estate attorney known for, let's just say, creative solutions. He was the kind of guy you called when you wanted to blur the lines between legal and unethical. It all made sense now. Kyle wasn't just guessing. He was being coached. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment until 3 a.m., replaying everything in my head. Every family dinner where I paid the bill. Every time I was told I didn't need anything because I was so put together. Every sacrifice I made without expecting thanks, only to be taken for granted. But this wasn't just ingratitude anymore. This was theft. By Wednesday morning, I had a plan. I met Alex at the county records office to file a notice of interest, a formal legal document that would flag any attempt to transfer, use, or modify ownership of the house without my consent. That would stop Kyle cold, or so I thought, because as I walked back to my car, Alex's phone buzzed. He picked up, listened for a second, then looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face. Claire, he said slowly, you're not going to believe this. What? He handed me his phone. On the screen was an email thread from the local bank. Kyle had already submitted loan paperwork, listing the house as collateral. And it had been pre-approved, pending verification of ownership. And the signature he submitted was mine. I'd been calm up until that point, focused, tactical. But seeing my forged signature on a bank document, that changed everything. I stood in the parking lot staring at the printout Alex had just handed me. My name, my address, my forged consent. Kyle had used my name to secure a $150,000 loan against my house. The same house I had saved with my own money, my own blood and sweat. and he damn near got away with it. I looked at Alex. Can we stop this? He nodded. I already called the bank's fraud division. They've frozen the application pending verification. But Claire, if Kyle pushes this, things could get messy. Messy? Messy was what I grew up in. This wasn't messy. This was war. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I didn't even eat. I just opened every folder I had on the house, sorted every email, and listed every expense I'd covered over the past 5 years. Roof replacement, electrical rewiring, foundation repair, taxes, insurance. Every dollar I'd spent while my family pretended I was just helping out. By sunrise, I was ready. Saturday afternoon, I invited them all back to the house. I didn't explain why. I just said it was important and that I had something to share. Typical Claire. Always composed. Always the peacemaker. They came. Of course they did. Brooke looked nervous. Mom showed up wearing pearls like it was a church function. Kyle wore a stupid blazer over a t-shirt that said, "Hustle first." Dad was already annoyed before he sat down. I stood by the kitchen counter, a folder in my hand. I'm not going to yell, I started, because honestly, I'm past the point of being shocked. But I am going to be very clear, so nobody here can pretend they didn't understand me this time. I opened the folder. This is a notarized statement of ownership. The house is legally mine. I've also filed a notice of interest with the county and flagged any attempts to alter the title or use the property as collateral. Which means, Kyle, I turned to him, your little bank stunt is dead in the water. He blinked. Mom gasped. Dad stiffened. And this, I said, pulling out the next document, is a cease and desist order, prepped and ready to serve if either of you attempt to claim any financial interest in the house again. Claire, my mom started, voice trembling, you're making this bigger than it is. I laughed. I'm making it exactly as big as it already is. I just finally showed up for it. Kyle muttered something under his breath. What was that? I snapped. He looked up, smug again. You're just mad we didn't ask for permission first. No, I said evenly. I'm mad that you committed fraud and my family backed you with silence. Silence again. Just like always. Claire, Dad finally said, we've made mistakes. But you don't have to ruin everything over a misunderstanding. I turned to him slowly. Is it still a misunderstanding if the lawyer you recommended was helping Kyle file transfer paperwork behind my back? His mouth opened, then closed. Brooke stared at him in disbelief. You told me you didn't know, she said. I just thought it would help Kyle get started, Dad stammered. It was almost funny, watching them fall apart like that. For years, I'd been the glue holding this house together, and they didn't notice, until I stopped sticking around. I pulled out one last document. This, I said, is an eviction notice. Brooke, Kyle, you have 21 days to vacate. I'm done pretending this is still a family home. Brooke broke down crying. Mom rushed to her side. Dad just sat there, defeated. And Kyle? He stood up and said, You'll regret this. I met his eyes. You'll regret underestimating me. As they stormed out one by one, I stayed behind, alone in the house I once thought I'd given away too easily. And just when I thought the day couldn't get any more surreal, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Claire Hastings? The voice asked. Yes? This is Danielle Howard from Fairview Realty. I've been trying to reach you. Someone just attempted to list your property, without your authorization. They claimed they had your verbal approval. I felt my knees buckle. Who? I asked. There was a pause. The name on the paperwork was Martha Hastings, my mother. I stood in my kitchen, hand frozen midair, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. Could you repeat that? I asked, though I already knew I'd heard it right. The woman on the phone, Danielle from the realty office, sounded hesitant. Your mother, Martha Hastings. She said she had verbal permission to list the property. We were in early prep stages. No listing went public yet, but she was asking about pre-sale estimates and staging services. My mom, the same woman who used to call me crying whenever the water heater broke. The one who told me last week, "This is your home too, sweetie." She'd gone behind my back. Again. Except this time, it wasn't Kyle. It wasn't Brooke. It was her. I thanked Danielle and told her under no circumstances was that house for sale. Then I hung up and stared at the living room around me. The one I'd kept so carefully intact all these years. The walls I'd painted. The furniture I'd refinished with my own hands. Suddenly, it all looked foreign. Like a place I had protected for a family that never truly protected me. That night, I didn't just feel angry. I felt done. So I acted. The next morning, I drove to the county clerk's office and filed a formal fraud report against my mother. I showed the documents. The forged listing intent. The phone log. Everything. Then I called Alex and asked him to push the cease and desist into a legal restraining order, blocking any further attempt from anyone in my family to represent, access, or use the property in any way without written legal consent. 2 days later, I served Brooke and Kyle with formal eviction papers through a process server. No more polite emails. No more conversations. They had 14 days. When Brooke called sobbing, I didn't pick up. When Kyle texted, "You've gone too far," I blocked him. And then, when my dad showed up at the hospital during my night shift, standing outside the ER waiting area with a manila envelope, I didn't stop walking. I glanced at him once, said, "You had your chance to be honest," and kept going. That was the first time I'd ever seen his face fall like that. Like maybe, just maybe, he realized he'd chosen the wrong people to protect. The fallout came fast. My mom's attempted listing, paired with Kyle's forged loan documents, triggered a formal investigation. The bank contacted law enforcement. Kyle was subpoenaed. His loan application was flagged as an attempted fraud case, and his shiny new LLC froze. Brooke moved out quietly, back to my parents' condo. I heard she was working part-time at a retail shop. Honestly, I hope she's okay. As for my mom, she stopped calling after I sent her the legal letter that outlined in painful detail every boundary she'd crossed, and how, going forward, all contact had to go through my attorney. It's been 3 months now. The house is mine. Fully secured, both legally and emotionally. I finally hired a restoration team to help fix up the guest room and turn my old bedroom into a real study space. Something just for me. The walls are now a deep forest green. The bookshelf, filled with things I love. Not what I was expected to love. The other night, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine and just listened. No yelling. No manipulation. No walking on eggshells. Just peace. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. People always say family is forever. But I've learned that forever only works if there's respect. Without that, you're just surviving tradition, not living truth. I don't know if what I did makes me the villain in their story, but I do know I finally became the hero in mine. If you've ever had to stand up to your own family just to protect what's rightfully yours, or if you've been the good kid who got used one too many times, drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you handled it. And if this story hit something real in you, feel free to stick around. I've got more to share. Sometimes telling the truth out loud is the best revenge there is.